Hello, world. Welcome to Build Series. I'm your host, HuffPost Lee Blickley, and you might recognize our guest Ben Aldridge from Fleabag or perhaps Rain, but these days he's on the small screen as Thomas Wayne, yes, Bruce Wayne's father, yes, Bat Daddy, in Epix Batman prequel series, Pennyworth. The show finally gives us the origin story of our favorite legendary butler, Alfred, a former soldier who starts a security company and begins assisting none other than billionaire philanthropist Thomas Wayne. Before we get Ben out here for a chat, let's roll a clip from Pennyworth. Let's welcome Ben Aldridge from Pennyworth.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You were just saying that's a very long 2-minute clip of you.
Like, you're subjecting me to watching 2 minutes of myself right now.
How is that for you to watch yourself on screen?
I think I'm getting better at it, I guess, over the years, but yeah.
So I introed you as Bat Daddy because I heard that's been like your running nickname for this role.
Hashtag Bat Daddy, yeah. I mean, it might be something that I tried to get going, but I think it's catching on.
So yeah, tell us the origin story of Bat Daddy because I hear a former co-star of yours is kind of the creator of this hashtag.
Yeah, I mentioned this the other day and it's been picked up, but yeah, Andrew Scott came up with it from Fleabag, so credit to him, yeah.
Hot priest from Fleabag.
Hot priest from Fleabag.
As we mentioned, Fleabag, though, congrats to you and the cast and crew on some great Emmy nominations this year.
Yes, congrats.
Let's get a round of applause. Does everyone watch Fleabag in here? I hope you do.
They all hate it.
How is it for you to finally see that show get recognized on a big platform like the Emmy?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I know with Series 1 that it obviously was getting great recognition and it felt like from the right people as well over here in the UK. And then Series 2 just seems to have exploded. And I think it's the subject matter. I think prefacing it as Phoebe does, or Fleabag does, saying this is a love story. Mm-hmm. I think Series 1, people were kind of alarmed by the character and they kind of wanted to save her, I think, but a lot of people could really relate to it. And then I think Series 2, they want to go, everyone wants a love story.
Yeah.
And it's not a traditional love story, but I think that kind of really pulled people in. It just seems to have exploded, which is great.
Yeah, and going from a show like this to something like Pennyworth is pretty exciting because they're very, very different roles for you. So tell me how you got the role in Pennyworth and what that process was like.
It was quite a simple process for me, quite straightforward. The script and audition slides landed in my inbox, and I was like, oh, this sounds. Well, I guess in my head I thought there are a lot of spin-off shows about superheroes right now, so I was like, this could be interesting, and then read it, and I think on the second page is Brunos, the showrunner, show creator, Bruno Heller. It's his opening description of the world that it's set in, and I was like, okay, I'm in. This sounds amazing. It was like this 1960s version of London, but twisted, dark, more macabre, recognizable cultural aesthetic elements that he's pulled upon, like fashion and rock and pop, but are very unpredictable with a kind of like a danger to it. And I was like, yes, I would like to do this. So I just put it on tape and then went and met Bruno and Danny in a recall. And shortly heard afterwards that I was going to be stepping into Thomas Wayne's boots.
And, Tom, these are big shoes to fill only because we know one thing really about Thomas Wayne is that he dies.
He dies, yeah.
He is Batman's father.
Spoiler alert,
yeah.
Dead.
So how was it for you to kind of create this character, knowing that that's kind of the end game for you, but you get to kind of play out a character that we don't really know aside from that one big moment?
I think that was the exciting thing about it, actually, is that some people were like, oh, do you feel pressure from the DC fans? There's a huge fan base for it all out there. But yeah, very little is known about him. We get a bit from the comics that he's this upstanding philanthropist, this has a strong moral backbone, and that he's a surgeon, I think, in the comics. But I think Bruno's been able to really flesh out a whole backstory. It's basically been a clean slate, and he's got such a creative and imaginative mind. So I would say really exciting, and to be able to collaborate and create that along with him. They wanted him, so what they said in an early, or that audition that I met them in, they started talking about Cary Grant, which immediately I was like, yes, amazing. But also, again, big shoes to fill. They want him to feel like this Hollywood movie star. So I kind of delved in and started watching his films, etc., and kind of tried to imbue Thomas with a bit of that kind of suave Hollywood magic, which I hope I've pulled off. But yeah, I guess they're big shoes. But yeah, the pressure wasn't on because we kind of create and make what we wanted for him. So that was cool.
Yeah, and of course, you're all English, and this is set in 1960s London, but you have to play the American in
Yeah.
the. How is that? Like, did you take dialect lessons and stuff like that, or is it pretty easy for you to go to an American accent?
I've played a couple of Americans before, so I guess I felt reasonably confident. But I think any accent that you do, there's a little bit of there's a lot of work that goes into it, and a bit of the first time you kind of like air it on set. You're like, oh my god, are people buying it and everything? But they wanted him to feel like this 1950s film star, as I was saying, and that's quite a different accent, I think, to the way people speak now. If you go back and look at the way that Cary Grant himself spoke, he was actually British, but he took on this American accent for his whole career. And people like Katharine Hepburn, and they had these wild ways of talking that you just wouldn't buy now, but these very staccato, kind of rhythmical, fast-paced ways of speaking. And so, yeah, I studied that and kind of tried to take a bit of influence from there, I think. So, I was just hopeful that that people get that that's what the accent that I'm going for.
Cool. And, we mentioned that it's the 60s, and so you watched some films from, before that and that time. But then Bruno created Gotham as well, and he's really into, world building. And
he is.
So his 1960s London is very, in a way, fictional. It has, like, tweaks of his imagination a bit. Was that cool for you to see that on the page?
Super cool. I think that's one of my favorite elements of the show, is the world that he's created. Because also this London feels like, it feels familiar, it's recognizable aesthetically, I was saying. We've got the fashion, the rock, mod, punk, pop kind of world. And you're kind of settling into this familiar world that you think you're getting to know, and then something very unpredictable and strange will happen. Like someone will cross frame carrying a pig as a pet, or there'll be someone in a gimp mask, or like, and you're suddenly thrown into this world that you're like, whoa, anything can happen. And he's also borrowed on, he's taken from English literature, and the villains in the show, some of them are famous, real existing villains in British history as well. So he's kind of been able to mix these genres. It's a very genre-bending piece, I think. It's got like a real originality to it. So.
I know. Is it true that Jack the Ripper kind of shows up in the show?
Yeah, he does kind of show up. Yeah, and that kind of that family are part of it. Yeah.
I saw an interview where Bruno said that it's kind of like a heroes versus villains show. He really wanted to explore heroes, but also get into villains and why they're villains. And we have a great villain in this show with Paloma Faith.
Yeah, she's amazing.
What was it like for you to kind of play out those scenarios where it's good guys versus bad guys, but more of a character study?
Yeah, I think what he's done really interestingly here is that it's not black and white. So you're not necessarily sure the whole time who's good and who's bad, who's a hero and who's a villain. I think even with Thomas Wayne, obviously, like you said, we know that he ends up dead, but we know he ends up as this upstanding citizen of Gotham. He doesn't necessarily start off completely squeaky clean. He's involved in this kind of covert underground world of intelligence. And I think all the villains and the seeming heroes in it are all kind of real flawed people. And they're put in these situations that are very morally compromising. So they all have to kind of... I think some of them have got their eyes on the greater good, and they have good intentions, but they're not just doing good things the whole time, which makes for an interesting show, I think.
Yeah, you don't know who is, like you said, good or bad.
Yeah, and I think he's done that purposely. I think the more classic incarnations of the DC comics have been good versus evil, but I think he's made a murkier, a kind of grayer world than that, which I think is pretty cool, yeah.
So we saw in the clip where you meet Alfred Pennyworth. Talk about your relationship with Alfred and what we can expect to see in the series, because it's a cool dynamic that we didn't really know that's how Alfred became involved.
Yeah, so we didn't really know how it would play out either, because the brilliant thing about doing this, which was quite exciting, we'd get it episode to episode, and that's the way he'd write it. So it wasn't like we had all 10 episodes at once and we could see a clear line through it. We were kind of discovering it as we went. So Jack and I were like, are they going to become friends soon? Because the characters start off very wary of each other, very suspicious of each other. Thomas needs something from Alfred, and it's kind of drawing him back into a life of violence that Alfred is very much trying to get away from post being in the SAS and fighting in the wars. And they're a bit like two tigers or sharks circling each other, trying to scope each other out. But it doesn't become Starsky and Hutch. It's not like a buddy. Let's go and fight crime together kind of thing. they're much more distant and suspicious of each other, which I think is interesting to play. There's quite a few power shifts throughout the series between them.
Yeah, and how did you like seeing, Alfred kind of come to life with Jack Bannon? Because it's an interesting thing. It definitely gives me Michael Caine vibes because I just picture, oh, he's going to grow up to be Michael Caine.
Yeah.
But how was it for him? Did you guys talk about how he wanted this character to come off? Kind of in a Bond-esque way, I'd have to say, like a James Bond way.
Yeah, I don't know. Something I love about Jack is that he doesn't theorize or intellectualize his acting. He's just very instinctive. And I know that they wanted to kind of imbue the character with a bit of Michael Caine because he was the inspiration behind the whole SAS story. He's the guy that came up with that as a backstory when he was doing the Christopher Nolan films. So they wanted to kind of nod towards him. But yeah, I love seeing how he kind of built the character and made the character. I think he's a fantastic actor, and it was really exciting to see him. The first time I saw him act was our read through, and he kind of carries the entire show on his shoulders. So I guess that could make or break a show depending on what he was doing, and that was an exciting thing to have watched that and then go, yep, we're in safe hands. That character's in very safe hands. And it's been exciting. Actually, the whole cast is lovely, and I think they're all very talented. So it's been a pleasure to work on for that.
Yeah, did you work with anybody in the cast prior to this show?
Is there anyone I knew? No, I don't think no, everyone was kind of new to me, yeah.
So what's that like to come on set and kind of do this, experimental show about, getting into the superhero world, but in a cool way and not really knowing anybody and just kind of diving in?
Well, I guess, it was slightly uncharted territory, but I think turning up and doing a job, filming something often feels like that. You just, day one, you're straight in there. You don't have time to kind of be gawping at the sets or being like, oh, well, this is amazing. You're just like straight to work. So you kind of acclimatize very quickly. This, I guess, there are some pretty amazing places that we film in. Like, I know they were filming in Trafalgar Square and some very iconic places in London. So there were times we were filming in this one street in Holborn in central London. And it's not often you ever get to film in central London. And I was like, whoa, we're shooting something in London, and like Trafalgar Square is just around the corner. So that was quite exciting, I think. But yeah, the whole experience was very exciting. It was cool.
Yeah, what's it like to kind of, I'm sure you shoot a lot in London, but is it cool to shoot something like this on this big of a scale in the city that you've kind of,
Yeah, actually, I haven't filmed in London very often. Most of my stuff, I've been very lucky to travel with all of the previous work I've done. I think Fleabag is the only thing that I've ever shot in London, yeah. So, yeah, it was very exciting. It was very nice to live at home and to be doing that. But, yeah, like I said, to be kind of on some epic sets and using parts of London that feature heavily in it as well. So, yeah, it was exciting. It was cool.
Is it cool to kind of walk on a set of a period piece like this and get enveloped, in the whole world?
Yes, totally. I've been lucky enough to work in quite a few different periods, I think. But never 1960s, and I've always really, really wanted to. I'm a huge Mad Men TV show fan. So turning up some of those mid-century sets, I was like, yeah, I'm channeling Don Draper here. This is me living a bit of a dream. And the costumes and stuff, and then the moustache, which was my idea, which lots of people try and make out that I should regret, but I am very proud of it. It kind of came about because I went back and looked at all the comic book depictions of Thomas Wayne, and he always has a moustache. And I went to Danny and Bruno, the creators, and I was like, shall I grow one? And they were like, well, have you got time? It was like 2 weeks before we started. And I was like, yeah, I think I've got time. Do you want that on your face for 7 months? And I was like, yeah, I do. And since then, actually, I had to shave off for an audition, and I really missed it. I was like, I don't know who I am without this attachment. None of my clothes make sense anymore. And anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, but that's cool because you kind of help develop that character and you add a little bit of yourself to it.
Yeah.
Is it sort of hard to shake him once you're, done playing Thomas Wayne for the season at least?
Do you know, no, there isn't. No, he isn't hard to shake, I don't think. But we're not similar at all as characters. But I quite like I know a lot of actors stay in accent for when they're on set. I kind of don't do that when I'm playing him. I quite enjoy the switch, like the change into feeling suddenly a bit like a small transformation into playing him. So no, it's not like I don't take it home or anything like that.
You never went out to the bars with your mustache and and your American accent?
I couldn't get rid of the mustache, but I never the American, no.
And you mentioned like Mad Men. This show does have a cool vibe to it. Like I mentioned, a little Bond.
Yeah.
spy thriller, but also a lot of love. It's like a love story.
There's some romance, yeah, and we get to see, so Martha Wayne, or she's called Martha Kane in Pennyworth, she will eventually become Martha Wayne.
Spoiler.
Whoops, spoiler. Bat Mummy. She'll eventually become Bat Mummy. That we see the beginnings of them, which isn't chemistry, isn't romance straight away. It's very much they repel each other actually. So, but there's romantic threads in it with Jack and or Alfred and another character as well. So it has romance in there. It kind of has a bit of everything really. It's kind of this like genre-bending spy thriller, action, romance, comic book kind of soup. Let's call it a soup, sure.
Do we get any hints, about maybe how Thomas and Martha's relationship led to who Bruce became in any way?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most exciting things actually, is that we begin to track and plot the DNA that becomes Bruce Wayne, the greatest superhero of all time. And so we recognize, there are traits in Thomas like his strong moral compass and his kind of, he's got like high intellect and detective skills that are recognizable in Bruce. And then in Martha, there's this kind of brooding, kind of neurotic pain that she's dealing with throughout the series that you see flashes of, that I think those are the genetics that make up Bruce eventually. So I think that's quite a cool thing that Bruno is going to continue to do, is explore the parents of Batman, the kind of who they are that make him who he was, kind of thing.
That's cool. I do wonder if Bruno is he so just wrapped up in the world of Batman that you guys had like a plethora of knowledge to kind of go off?
Yeah, he is. He'll feed you little nuggets at the side of set about your character, but also, he knows that world so well. And you can go to him and ask him anything about it, really. But yeah, I think he's just got an amazing imagination. I was often like, the show takes so many twists and turns, and every week when we'd get those scripts, it was always a surprise to me to be like, oh, that's suddenly an element of the show. I didn't see that coming at all. So, and that's all from his mind. So, yeah.
Yeah. Did he kind of just create this out of the idea of Alfred is a Brit as well, and maybe I just want to explore an origin story of somebody who's beloved, but maybe is not technically a superhero?
Yeah, I think that there was such. I think the character of Pennyworth resonated so well on Gotham, and people were real fans of that. And I think they thought. I think there was just an intrigue both on his and Danny Cannon's, our lead director's side. They were just like, this could be a brilliant character. This man takes care and is the tutor and the teacher of Batman. Let's find out about his history and his past and see if there are any moments that align with Batman and find out who this guy is. So I think that's kind of, it was their mutual intrigue, but also they really loved the idea of setting something in a London that they grew up in, that they knew. And I think finding a way to mesh those worlds, which they've found in this. So yeah,
it's really cool. And I do wonder if it's ever gonna, I'm sure there'll be a couple seasons. I'm hoping, because it's really
fingers
cool.
crossed.
But there's so much you can kind of explore. And then you can even end up like reaching Robert Pattinson's Batman. And
yeah, sure,
nice
great. We can give birth
event.
to him. That's fine. We can share the same genetics. I'll be into that.
Yeah. Do you know Robert Pattinson at all?
I don't know. No.
And he's going to be the new Batman, and a nice Brit as the new Batman.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see that. I'm excited to see it, and the Joker film as well with Joaquin Phoenix. They feel like they're taking them to a very kind of dark psychological place, which actually I think Pennyworth exists in that realm as well. It's kind of like very psychological and character driven. So.
I think that's what's cool with Batman and just his, these DC comics can be much darker than some of the other ones.
Yeah. They're flawed heroes, essentially, which means that, like I was saying, there's much more depth than them just being good guys. So, yeah.
Do you feel any pressure at all to kind of dip your toes into this world of DC comics and superheroes? And I know you were at Comic-Con.
To become a nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit, and I did a little bit. I kind of like I watched the films. I'd seen a lot of them already, and I've dipped my toe into the comic books. Yeah, I think going to Comic-Con, I was like, whoa, you get a flavor of how kind of big this world is, and and we were like, whoa, Batman's the king of Comic-Con, and our story is related to him. So it was kind of a bit of a wake-up call to be seeing some of our potential audience. It was exciting though as well. It was.
Is that your first time at Comic-Con?
Yes, it was.
I'm assuming, Fleabag and Rain. I don't know if they go to.
Yeah, not quite. Yeah, they're not quite Comic-Con shows. Yeah, so it was my first time.
That's cool. Well, maybe next time you'll have to cosplay yourself and just kind of go around and get people's gear on Pennyworth.
Everyone in moustaches and hats being Thomas Wayne.
Hey, Halloween costume.
That's great.
We have time for 2 audience questions, so we're going to throw it over. Here we go.
Hi.
How did you get into the acting? And if you haven't become an actor, what would you do?
Oh, so how did I get into the acting? My parents made a trade-off with me when I was 8. They were kind of forcing me to take piano lessons at the time, and this stage school opened up in my hometown, and they said, if you get into this, you can stop playing the piano. And I was like, yes, I'll do it. And got in, and then I was doing that for years as a teenager as well. But I think my mum said that she'd always find me in supermarkets entertaining older women, either dancing or singing for them, which is quite embarrassing, but that's what she'd find me doing. And if I weren't acting, I think now it's still an ambition of mine to pursue directing for camera, but I almost became a dancer rather than become an actor. I studied dance for all of my life, and then at 18 had to decide whether to take places at dance school or acting school, and decided acting, but that's probably what I would have done.
Oh, that's so cool. What kind of dance?
Contemporary.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it probably was fun to kind of get into, I know Bruno's really big, like you said, on the walk and being Cary Grant and all that. So
so the physical side, it's always helped with the physical side of acting, I think. I thought I'd do a lot more theatre involving dance. And I've done like one musical. I did a version of American Psycho back in London where I danced a lot. But I haven't done that much of it, weirdly, but I'd love to do more of it.
American Psycho musical, wow. It's just...
Yeah, it was good fun.
Out of my nightmares. We have time for one more.
Hello.
Hi.
You were talking about Comic-Con and kind of getting an idea of that fan world. Do you think that Pennyworth will maybe get that same intense fan club?
I mean, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I think the thing about the show as well is that you don't necessarily need to be a DC nerd or fan to key into it. I think there's some good foreshadowing, there's some visual moments where Bruno kind of are they called Easter eggs? I think people call them at Comic-Con, that he's plotted throughout the series that he borrows from the comic books. But I think also you could know nothing about Alfred or Batman, and there's this psychological spy drama to be a fan of. So yeah, I hope those people do love it and it resonates with them, but also with people that aren't necessarily genre fans. So yeah.
I think it will. I really enjoyed it. I saw a few episodes.
Oh, great.
And of course, last night was the premiere, Sunday nights, and now it will air Sundays on Epix.
Yeah.
We can't wait to see more from you. And thank you for
very
joining
much.
us. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you. Cheers.